Hello everyone and welcome to another video from the Tiny Menagerie. These tiny treasures are neon green rasboras, also known as Kobutai Rasbora. And the first thing that strikes you is just how well they live up to that name. They really do shine a bright neon green in a tank, which is quite unusual. Add to that a lovely purplish streak of shine that runs along their back, and you have a truly stunning little fish. But what are neon greens like to keep, and what kind of setup do they need? Well, neon greens hail from rivers and tributaries around Myanmar and Thailand. These waters are often clear, well oxygenated, with a strong flow and lined with a diverse range of plants, both aquatic and terrestrial. And when you watch them in a tank, you can really see how these little fish have adapted to this type of environment. For such a small fish, neon greens are strong swimmers. They have a very compact and powerful shape and relatively large fins. They are also extremely active, constantly on the move around their space. So while they are very small, with adults only reaching about 2 centimeters in length, they are not very well suited to very small tanks. They're not manic, and they tend to move with purpose and poise around rather than flitting about the place like a danio, but as a minimum you should aim to provide them with a tank that is at least 60 centimeters in length, and preferably much more. They are also a social species, and they need to be kept in a group with at least 6 individuals. Luckily, both males and females look very similar, with females just being a little bit larger and a little bit more rounded in the belly, whereas males are a little bit more shiny. But with a group of any mix of sexes, they're going to look absolutely wonderful. And on the subject of looks, these little fish put on their best display when they're in a dark tank with a dark substrate. Over a pale substrate, they will really wash out their colours as they try to blend in. Also, because that neon green is an iridescence rather than an actual colour, the base body colour is in fact a sort of olivey green, they shine their brightest when they have a very strong light directly overhead. Which, to be fair, is pretty typical in most fish tanks, but if you happen to be using a very diffuse light, or if you have the entire surface covered with floating plants, don't be surprised if your neon greens look a little bit less shiny than you were expecting. When it comes to tank design then, neon greens are active free-water swimmers. They don't really interact with or swim in and around plants or hardscape unless they're actively hiding in it, and they tend to stick instead to open areas in the middle section of the tank. They do sometimes go to the surface or the substrate, but only really if they think they've spotted food there. This being the case then, they do need a tank that gives them both space to swim, but also somewhere that they can hide as well if they get scared, and green neons really can be quite skittish, especially if they don't like their surroundings. If that's the case, they will crowd up somewhere in a corner and they will absolutely refuse to leave, to the point where you'll wonder if they're even still in the tank. This being the case, they do benefit from having other braver fish in the tank with them, such as small tetras, little ember tetras, or celestial pearl danios, for example. Then, once they're settled, and they feel like there's somebody else around who might take the hit if a predator comes along, the green neons themselves become great dithers for other shy fish, because once they are out, they tend to stand very prominently in the centre ground of the tank. This way then, you can use green neons to build up a community of smaller shy fish, so that everyone has somebody slightly braver than them in order to build up a sense of overall security. And I suppose what this is all boiling down to is the fact that neon greens are a little bit picky about their tank and their tank mates. So if you buy a group, you may well find yourself tweaking the environment quite a bit in order to get the best out of them. They're not the easiest of fish to immediately accommodate. Luckily then, when it comes to water parameters, neon greens are fairly hardy, preferring a neutral to slightly acidic pH and a temperature anywhere between 20 and 28 degrees C. They do very well in a tank that has strong flowing water, but I've also found them to be perfectly at ease in still water, so they seem to be very adaptable when it comes to water rate. When it comes to feeding neon greens as well, they are voracious little feeders, although they do seem to only have a very small appetite. So they feed very quickly, but they don't seem to eat much per fish, and this can make them quite easy to overfeed, because it looks like they're still hungry as they go dashing up to something, but then they'll just suddenly lose interest. And so again, it helps to keep them with other smaller bottom-dwelling fish, or shrimps for example, anything that's going to be able to hoover up all of the leftovers. They will eat absolutely anything so long as it's small enough to fit in their mouths, and they'll quite often take on things which are too big as well and just try to nibble things off from around the edges. And speaking of shrimps too, neon greens are fairly shrimp safe. They certainly have no interest in adult shrimp, and they don't go hunting around the hardscape or plants looking for shrimplets. That's not to say though that any little shrimplet that swims up into the water column is going to be safe. It will definitely get picked off. So, while a shrimp colony should be able to grow when housed with neon greens, they certainly can't be 100% trusted, and you shouldn't really be putting them in with a prized shrimp colony. So overall though, neon greens are a 50-50 fish. They're fairly easy to live with so long as you can get their tank and tank mates right, and once they're settled in they are nice and hardy, and they're easy to feed and look after in general. Meaning, it's all going to boil down to whether or not you can give them those tank requirements that they have. Anywho though, I hope you've enjoyed this little video all about neon green rasboras. Happy fish keeping everyone, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye!